Maya had learned, over many hard years, that the safest place to be was invisible. She worked the night shift at a 24-hour diner on the outskirts of Virginia Beach, a gray building with flickering neon letters that spelled eat, even when half the letters were dead. The customers were mostly truckers, late-shift nurses, and the occasional group of drunk sailors from the naval base. Maya kept her head down, poured coffee with a steady hand, and never offered more than a tight smile. She wore long sleeves even in July, and her dark hair fell across her face like a curtain. No one asked her name more than once. She was 28, but her eyes looked 40. There was a tiredness in her that went deeper than lack of sleep. She lived in a small studio apartment above a laundromat, and her only luxury was a battered Honda Civic that sometimes took 3 tries to start. Every paycheck went to rent, groceries, and a small lockbox under her bed where she kept cash for emergencies. She had no family she spoke to, no friends she called, and no social media presence at all. If you searched for Maya Chen online, you would find nothing. She had worked hard to make sure of that. Her routine was simple. Wake up at 4 in the afternoon. Shower, dress, eat a bowl of rice with whatever vegetables were on sale. Drive to the diner by 6. Work from 7 at night until 7 in the morning. Drive home, lock the door, sleep, repeat. The other waitresses thought she was strange. They whispered that she was hiding from something, an abusive ex, maybe, or the law. Maya heard the rumors but never corrected them. Let them think what they wanted. The truth was much worse. The truth was that she had been someone else once. A different name, a different life, a different country. She had worn a uniform and carried a rifle. She had been a combat medic in the army, attached to a special operations unit in Afghanistan. That was 7 years ago, but the memories were as fresh as if they had happened yesterday. The dust, the heat, the sound of rotor blades, the screaming. Always the screaming. She had been good at her job. Better than good. She had saved lives that should have been lost, pulling wounded soldiers out of firefights while bullets kicked up dirt around her head. She had earned medals she never wore and respect she never asked for. But one mission had changed everything. One mission had broken her in ways no surgeon could fix. After that, she had walked away from the army, changed her name, and disappeared into the anonymous grind of civilian life. She told herself she was fine. She told herself the nightmares would stop eventually. They never did. The diner was busier than usual on a Thursday night in October. A naval exercise had just ended, and the base had released several dozen sailors on liberty. They came in waves, laughing too loud, filling the booths, ordering coffee and pie and breakfast platters at 2 in the morning. Maya moved between tables like a ghost, refilling cups and clearing plates without making eye contact. She was efficient but cold, and some of the younger sailors tried to flirt with her. She ignored them completely. One of them called her a robot. She didn't care. Around 3 in the morning, the door opened and 4 men walked in. They were different from the other customers. They moved quietly, deliberately, scanning the room before they entered. They wore civilian clothes, jeans, jackets, baseball caps, but their posture gave them away. Straight backs, watchful eyes, hands never too far from their hips. Maya had seen that posture before. These were not regular sailors. These were special operators. Probably SEALs, given how close they were to the base. The oldest of the group was a man in his early 40s, tall and broad-shouldered with a face that looked like it had been carved from granite. He had a short beard, gray at the temples, and eyes that missed nothing. He led the others to a corner booth and sat with his back to the wall. Maya felt a flicker of unease. Men like that noticed things. Men like that could see through her curtain of hair and her long sleeves. Men like that might recognize her. She took their order without speaking more than necessary. Black coffee for the older man, tea for the others, a plate of toast and eggs that no one seemed interested in eating. As she set the coffee down, her sleeve rode up just a fraction of an inch. The older man's eyes flicked to her wrist, then away. Maya pulled her sleeve down quickly and retreated to the counter. Her heart was beating faster than it should have been. She told herself it was nothing. He hadn't seen anything. The tattoo on her wrist was small, easy to miss. It was just a simple caduceus, the medical symbol, with a date underneath. That date meant nothing to most people. But to anyone who had been there, it meant everything. The men stayed for an hour. They talked in low voices, ate nothing, and drank their coffee slowly. Maya avoided their corner as much as she could. When they finally got up to leave, the older man walked to the register where she was standing. He placed a $20 bill on the counter and said, "Keep the change." Then he paused. His eyes met hers for the first time. There was something in his gaze, not recognition, exactly, but curiosity. He looked at her face, then at her covered wrist, then back at her face. "You have good hands," he said quietly. "Steady. I've seen hands like yours before." Maya said nothing. Her throat had closed up. The man studied her for another long moment, then nodded and walked out. The bell above the door jingled. Maya stood frozen behind the counter, her hands trembling for the first time in years. She knew who he was. She had known it the moment he walked in. His name was Commander Eric Vance, and he had been her commanding officer on that mission 7 years ago. The mission where everything went wrong. The mission where she had left a piece of herself behind in the dust and the blood. She had hoped he wouldn't recognize her. She had changed her name, her hair, her whole life. But Commander Vance had always had a memory like a steel trap. And he had seen her tattoo. That tiny date, inked in black on the inside of her wrist. May 17th, the day of the ambush. The day she had crawled through gunfire to save 3 men, only to watch the 4th die in her arms because she couldn't stop the bleeding fast enough. The day she had been awarded a silver star that she never claimed. Maya finished her shift in a daze. She drove home on autopilot, locked her door, and sat on the edge of her bed without taking off her shoes. She stared at the wall for a long time. Then she pulled up her sleeve and looked at the tattoo. The date stared back at her. She had gotten it as a reminder of what she had done and what she had failed to do. She had thought it would keep her humble, keep her grounded. Instead, it had just become a brand, a mark of her shame. She did not sleep that day. She lay awake, listening to the hum of the laundromat below, and wondered if Commander Vance would come back. Wondered if he would tell anyone. Wondered if her careful, invisible life was about to crumble. She told herself it didn't matter. She was nobody now. Just a waitress with a bad past and a small tattoo. But deep down, she knew that wasn't true. She had never stopped being the woman who crawled through gunfire. She had just buried her alive. Commander Eric Vance did not sleep well that night either. He lay in his bed in the quiet suburbs of Virginia Beach, staring at the ceiling, replaying the moment in the diner over and over. The waitress with the tired eyes and the covered wrist. The way she had moved, efficient, silent, watchful. The way her hands had been so steady when she poured his coffee. He had seen those hands before. He was sure of it. He got up at 5 in the morning, made a pot of black coffee, and sat down at his laptop. He had access to military databases, old personnel files, records that most people couldn't touch. He typed in a few keywords. Combat medics. Special operations. Afghanistan. The date May 17th, 7 years ago. A list of names appeared. Most of them he recognized. Most of them were still in service or had left honorably. But one name stood out. A woman named Sergeant Lena Kovic, Silver Star recipient. Distinguished service. Then, nothing. Her record went cold after that year. No further assignments, no discharge paperwork, no address. It was as if she had vanished. Vance stared at the screen. Lena Kovic, he remembered her well. She had been small and fierce, barely 5 feet tall, with a temper that could scare grown men. She had been the best medic he had ever worked with. On the day of the ambush, she had run into an open field while machine guns fired from 3 directions. She had dragged one wounded soldier to cover, then gone back for another. She had saved 3 lives that day. But the 4th, a young kid named Private First Class Daniel Reese, had died in her arms. Vance had watched it happen from 50 meters away. He had seen Lena's face when the boy's eyes went blank. He had seen something break inside her. After that mission, Lena had requested a transfer. Then another transfer. Then she had taken leave and never come back. Vance had tried to find her, to check on her, but she had disappeared completely. He had assumed she had left the army and started a new life somewhere. He had not assumed she would be working the night shift in a greasy spoon diner. Hiding behind long sleeves and a curtain of hair, he went back to the diner that evening. Alone this time. He sat at the counter instead of a booth, and when Maya came out from the kitchen, she stopped dead. For a second, her mask slipped. He saw fear in her eyes. Real, raw fear. Then the mask went back up, and she walked over to him with a coffee pot. "What can I get you?" she asked, her voice flat. "Lena," he said quietly. The coffee pot trembled in her hand. "Just a little." Then she set it down on the counter with a deliberate calm. "I don't know anyone by that name." "Yes, you do," Vance said. "You know her better than anyone. And I'm not here to hurt you. I'm here because I've been looking for you for 7 years." Maya stared at him. The diner was nearly empty at this hour, just a few truckers in the back, lost in their own worlds. She could have walked away. She could have called the manager. She could have denied everything. But something in Vance's voice stopped her. It wasn't anger or accusation. It was something worse. It was kindness. "Why?" she whispered. "Because I need you to know that Daniel Reese's death was not your fault," Vance said. "And I need you to know that the 3 men you saved that day, they're alive because of you. They have families. They have children. They have lives that you gave them. And they've been asking about you for years." Maya's eyes filled with tears. She blinked them back furiously. She had not cried in 7 years, not once. She had frozen that part of herself, locked it away in the same box where she kept her medals and her memories. But Vance's words were cracking the lock. "You don't understand," she said, her voice breaking. "I was right there. I had my hands on his wound. I could feel the blood slipping through my fingers. If I had been faster, if I had moved differently, if you had been anyone else, he would have died in that field instead of in your arms," Vance interrupted. "You gave him a chance. You gave him comfort. You stayed with him when everyone else was taking cover. That's not failure, Lena, that's heroism. And you've been punishing yourself for it long enough." Maya turned away. She walked to the end of the counter and stood with her back to him, her shoulders shaking. Vance did not follow. He sat quietly and waited. After a long minute, she came back. Her face was wet, but her jaw was set. "I changed my name for a reason," she said. "I don't want to be that person anymore. I don't want the medals or the attention or the pity. I just want to be left alone." "I'm not asking you to be that person," Vance said. "I'm asking you to stop running. Daniel's mother is still alive. She's in a nursing home in Norfolk. She's asked to meet you every year since the funeral. She wants to thank you. She wants to tell you that her son talked about you in his last letters. He said you were the bravest person he ever met." Maya closed her eyes. The tears were falling freely now, and she didn't bother to wipe them away. "I can't," she whispered. "You can," Vance said. "And you will. Not because I'm telling you to, but because you've spent 7 years hiding from a ghost that was never yours to carry. It's time to put him to rest." He stood up, left a 20 on the counter, and walked toward the door. Before he left, he turned back. "The diner will still be here tomorrow," he said. "But so will I, and so will Daniel's mother. When you're ready, you know where to find us." Then he was gone. The bell above the door jingled, and the diner fell silent again. Maya stood behind the counter for a long time, staring at the door. Then she looked down at her wrist, at the tattoo hidden beneath her sleeve. May 17th, the day she had lost everything. Or maybe, she thought for the first time, the day she had found out what she was really made of. She did not go home that morning. Instead, she drove to Norfolk. She found the nursing home just as the sun was rising. She sat in her car for an hour, her hands gripping the steering wheel. Then she got out, walked inside, and asked to see Mrs. Reese. The old woman was small and frail, with white hair and kind eyes. When Maya introduced herself using her real name for the first time in 7 years, Mrs. Reese began to cry. She took Maya's hands in hers and kissed them. "My Danny wrote about you," she said. "He said you had the gentlest hands. He said you held him when he was scared. Thank you. Thank you for being with him at the end." Maya cried then. Not the silent, frozen tears of the past 7 years, but real, heaving sobs that came from a place she had locked away for too long. She cried for Daniel Reese, for the 3 men she had saved, for herself. And when she was done, she felt something she had not felt in a very long time. She felt light. She felt free. She felt like maybe, just maybe, she could stop hiding. She went back to the diner that night, but only to give her notice. The manager was confused. The other waitresses were shocked. Maya just smiled a real smile and walked out into the cool October air. Commander Vance was waiting for her in the parking lot. He didn't say anything. He just nodded, got into his car, and drove away. Maya got into her Honda, which started on the first try for once, and drove toward a future she had never dared to imagine. She didn't know what came next. But for the first time in 7 years, she was ready to find out. The tattoo on her wrist was no longer a brand of shame. It was a reminder of what she had survived, and who she had been, and who she could still become. She meant to stay in the background, but the background was no longer big enough to hold her.